Hello everybody, it's Tarun. Welcome to your 14th tutorial in the HTML course. In this tutorial, I'll start with next unit, which is forms. So first of all, I'll tell you what I'll cover in this unit. In this unit, I'll cover how forms work, the form element, post versus get, variables and values, form controls and form accessibility features. Okay. It didn't take long for the web to shift from a network of pages to read to a place where you went to get things done, such as making purchases, booking tickets, signing petitions, searching a site, posting a tweet, and the list goes on. Okay. All of these interactions are handled by forms. In fact, in response to this shift from page to application, HTML5 introduces a new variety or new era of new form controls, new form controls and attributes that make it easier for users to fill out forms and for developers to create them. Tasks have been traditionally relied on JavaScript, may be handled by markup and native browser behavior alone. HTML5 introduces a number of new form related elements, 13 new input types, and many new attributes, okay, which I'll tell you in a table. Some of these features are waiting for browser implementation to catch up. So I'll be sure here to note which controls will may not be universally supported. So let's start with the first topic, which is how forms work. There are two parts of a working form. The first part of the is the form that you see on the page itself, that is created using HTML markup. Okay. Forms are made up of buttons, input fields, and drop-down menus, which are collectively known as form controls, and they're used to collect information from the users. Forms may also contain text and other elements. The other component of a web form is an application or a script on the server that processes that information collected by the form and returns an appropriate response. It is what that makes the forms work. In other words, posting an HTML document with form elements isn't enough. Web applications and scripts require programming and that know how that is beyond the scope of okay, just let me rephrase it. Web applications and scripts require programming, okay, but all these things are not in the scope of this course, so you can go ahead and learn about them on the internet. So now let's move forward from to the next topic, which is from data entry to response. Okay, but before going to that, I want to have a word about encoding. Form data is encoded using the same method used for URLs, in which spaces and other characters that are not permitted are translated into their hexadecimal equivalents. For example, each space character in the collected form is represented by the character string %20, and a slash character is replaced by %2f. So you do not need to worry about this. The browser handles it automatically. So now let's move back to data entry to response. If you are going to be creating web forms, it is beneficial to understand what is happening behind the scenes. The example which I will tell you traces the steps of a transaction using a simple form that gathers name, email address for a mailing list. However, it is typical of the process for many forms. So let me just show you. So this is a sample form. Don't worry about it how I have made it. I'll teach you as I go through this unit. So let's see how does it look in the browser. It looks like this. So consider the visitor. Let's call her Sally. Okay. Opens the web page from web page inside which there is a form. The browser sees the form control elements in the markup and renders them with appropriate form controls on the page, including two text entry fields and a submit button. So now the user will like to sign up for the mailing list. So the user enters the name and email address into the fields and submits the form by hitting the submit button. The browser collects the information the user entered, encodes it, and sends it to the web application on the server. The web application accepts the information and processes it. And in this example, the name and email address are added to a database. The web application also returns a response. The kind of response sent back depends on the content and purpose of the form. Here the response is a simple web page that contains a thank you for signing up for the mailing list. Okay, so if I type in the name, let's say Tarun, and an email. Okay, so if I submit it, so I have not linked it to the page where it will show me thanks. Okay, so now let's understand our form. So understanding our form, we need to first understand the form element, okay, which is this element. It needs a opening and a closing tag. The form element is a container for all the contents of the form, including some number of form controls such as text entry fields and buttons. It may also contain block elements such as headings, paragraphs, lists. However, it may not contain another form element. Okay, so in addition to being a container for form control elements, the form element has some attributes that are necessary for interacting with the form processing program on the server. So now let's take a look at each. So first of all, we'll talk about the action attribute. The action attribute, okay, this attribute provides the location or the URL of the application or script. Here I have used a PHP file, but I have just used it here, but I do not have it in my folder. Okay, which is sometimes called the action page, and it will be used to process the form. The action attribute in this example sends the data to a script called mailing list .php. The .php suffix indicates that this form is processed by a script written in the PHP scripting language. But web forms may be processed using one of the following technologies. The first one is .php. It is an open source scripting language most commonly used with the Apache web server. Second one is Microsoft's ASP.NET, and .ASP is a programming environment for the Microsoft Internet Information Server. The third is Ruby on Rails. Ruby is the programming language that is used with the Rails platform. Many popular web applications are built with it. Java Server Pages, which is .JSP, is a Java-based technology similar to ASP. And Python is a popular scripting language for web and server applications. There are other forms processing options that may have their own suffixes or none at all. So sometimes there is form processing code such as PHP embedded right in the HTML file. In that case, leave the action empty and the form will post to the page itself. Okay, so now let's see the next attribute, which is method. The method attribute specifies how the information should be sent to the server. Let's use this data gathered from the form which I told you as an example. Okay, here I have added some username and some email. So when the browser encodes that information for its trip to the server, it looks something like this. Let me just show you. Okay, so this is how your username and email look like. So the username was Sally Stronga. So there was a space between it. So %20 added automatically. And in the email, there was space not space, @ symbol. at before the example.com, so %40 was added there. Okay. There are only two methods for sending this encoded data to the server, post or get, indicated using the method attribute in the form element. The method is optional and will default to get if omitted. So we'll look at difference between the two methods in the following section. So the example which I have told you is the post method. So let's see more about post method. When the forms method is set to post, the browser sends a separate server request containing some special headers followed by the data. Only the server sees the content of this request. Thus, it is the best method for sending secure information such as credit card or other personal information. The post method is also preferable for sending a lot of data such as lengthy text entry, because there is no character limit as there is for get. So now let's see the get method. With the get method, the encoded form data gets tagged right into the URL, sent it to the server. A question mark character separates the URL from the following data, as I'll show you now. Okay. So if I had used the get method, then it would have sent it the URL like this: get, then the URL. Okay. So here you can see that the question mark comes here, and then name, and then email consecutively within the URL. So the get method is appropriate if you want users to be able to bookmark the results of a form submission, such as a list of search results, because the content of the form is in plain sight. So get is not an appropriate for forms which require private, personal or financial informations. In addition, get may not be used when the form is used to upload a file. So in this unit, we'll stick with the more important method, which is post method. So now that we have gotten through the technical aspects of the form element, so we can take out the real meat of forms, which is form controls. So now let's move forward to the next topic, which is variables and content. Web forms use a variety of controls that allow the user to enter information or choose options. Control types include various text entry fields, buttons, menus, and a few controls with special functions. They are added to the document using a collection of form control elements that we'll be examining one by one in the upcoming section. So as a web designer, it is important to be familiar with control options to make your forms easy and intuitive to use. It is also useful to have an idea of what form controls are doing behind the scenes. I'll start with the name attribute inside the variables and content in the next tutorial. So this was all from my side in this tutorial. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next tutorial.